wasn't expecting those till the morning, but thank you.
Yeah, I would probably forget. How much was
3. Shalom, everyone. We'll begin with Mincha for Erev Yom Kippur, which you can find. Where is it here? Beginning on page 431 at the back of our Machzorim, page 431.
אשרי יושבי ביתך, הלוך הסלע, שם שככה לא שם. תהילת אדוני ידבר פי וברך כל בשר שם קודשו לעולם ועד ואנחנו נברך ימתה ויד עולם. הללויה.
On page 433, we continue in private prayer the Mincha Amidah. We continue with Kaddish Shalem in the middle of page 441.
יתגדל וקדש שם רבה.
Amen.
בעלמא דברי קירותי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון ובמכון ובחיי כל בית ישראל בגלל בזמן קריב ואמרו אמן.
Amen. Yehei Shmei Barak L'Olam Lamei Amaya.
יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שם מלך קודשה. בריחו לעילה. לעילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה תשבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמא ואמרו אמן.
Amen.
תתקבל צלותכון ובתכון דכל ישראל קדמון דבשמיא ואמרו אמן.
Amen.
יהי שלמה רבה משמיים וחם עלינו כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
Amen.
נעשה שלום ממרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו וכל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
Amen.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל.
אנחנו קוראים
ואנחנו קוראים אין עוד על כנכבה. עוד שדי. ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
Kaddish Yatom for mourners and those observing Yortzeit, page 443. Yitgadal v'yitgadash Shmei Rabbah, Bialma divra kirute viamlich malchute. V'chaye echon u'v'yom echon u'v'chaye d'chol beit Yisrael. Ba'agala u'vizman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehei shmei rabba mevarach la'alam l'amei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shmei d'kudsha brichu. La'ela mikol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiran bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom v'imromav huya oseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Chavirim will pause for just a moment to allow those who have not yet put on their talitot to do so, and then we will continue with Kol Nidrei. Yom Kippur provides the opportunity to atone for sins against God. Yom Kippur does not automatically atone for sins against another human being until one has placated the person offended. I ask you to join me on page 203 on the far left column, the middle passage captioned, "A Meditation Before Yom Kippur." I hereby forgive all who have hurt me, all who have done me wrong, whether deliberately or by accident, whether by word or by deed. May no one be punished on my account. As I forgive and pardon fully those who have done me wrong, may those whom I have harmed by word or deed forgive and pardon me, whether I acted deliberately or by accident. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, my rock and my redeemer. We continue now on page 204, the last paragraph. I'll ask everyone to please rise as we open the ark.
Bishiva shel mala ubishiva shel mata al dat hamakom ve'al dat hakahal anu matirin lehitpalel im ha'avaryanim bishiva shel mala ubishiva shel mata al dat hamakom ve'al dat ha'kahal anu matirin lehitpalel im ha'avaryanim bishiva shel mala ubishiva shel mata al dat hamakom ועל דעת הקהל אנו מתירים להתפלל עם העבריינים.
All the vows on our lips, the burdens in our hearts, the pent-up regrets about which we brooded and spoke through prayers without end on last Atonement Day did not change our way of life, did not bring deliverance in the year that is gone. From mountain peaks of fervor, we fell to common ways at the close of the fast. Will you hear our regret? Will you open our prison, release us from shackles of habit? Will you accept our prayers, forgive our wrongs, though we sin again and again? In moments of weakness, we do not remember promises of Atonement Day. Recall that we easily forget. Take only our heart's intent. Forgive us, pardon us. The Chazan continues with Kol Nidre, page 205.
Sarei v'charamei v'konamei v'chinoyei v'kinosei u'shevu Shatana miyom kippurim zeh ad yom kippurim betelin umevutalin lo sharirin velakayamin niderana la niderei לאסרי ושבועתנה לשבות. כל נדרי ושרי וחרמי וקונמי וכינויי וכינוסי ושבועות דין דרנה ודאיש טבנה ודאחרימנה ודסרנה על נפשתנה מיום כיפורים זה עד יום כיפורים אבא עלינו לטובה כולכון יכרת נא וכון כולכון יכון שרן שוויקין שוויתין בטלין ומבוטלין לא שרירין ולא קיימין נידרנה לה נידרי ואסרנה לאסרי ושבועתנה לשבות. כל נדרי ושרי וחרמי וקונמי וכינויי וכינוסי ושבועות דין ודאישתבנה ודארימנה ודסרנה על נפשתנה מיום כיפורים זה עד יום כיפורים הבא עלינו לטובה כולכון יחרתנה וכון כולכון יכון שרן שביטין בטלין ומבוטלין לשרירין ולקיימים נידרנה לנידרי וסרנה לאסרי ושבועתנה לשבועות ונסלח לכל הדת בני ישראל ולגר הגר בתוכם כי לכל העם בשגגה ונסלח לכל הדת בני ישראל ולגר הגר בתוכם כי לכל העם בשגגה ונסלח לכל הדת בני ישראל ולגר הגר בתוכם כי לכל העם בשגגה סלח נא לבון העם הזה כגודל חסדך וכאשר נשאת לעם הזה ממצרים ועד הנה ושם נאמר ויאמר אדוני סלחתי כדבריך ויאמר אדוני סלחתי כדבריך ויאמר אדוני סלחתי כדבריך כדבריך ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה.
Amen. As the ark is closed, we remain standing for Baruch Hu at the top of page 207.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
You may be seated as we read together in the middle of the facing page. Baruch Atah Adonai, our God, ruler of time and space, whose word brings the evening dusk, whose wisdom opens the gates of dawn, whose understanding changes the day's division, whose will sets the succession of seasons and arranges the stars in their places in the sky, who creates day and night, who rolls away light before darkness and darkness from light, who makes day pass into night, who distinguishes day from night. Adonai Tzvaot is your name. Living and ever-present God, may your rule be with us forever and ever. Baruch Atah Adonai, who brings each evening's dusk.
ומעביר יום ומביא לילה ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה. אדוני צבאות שמו, אל חי וקיים תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני.
Baruch Hu Baruch Shemo.
Amari Varavim.
Amen. We read together at the top of the next page. Ahavat Olam Beit Yisrael Amcha Ahavta Torah umitzvot chukim umishpatim otanu limadta Al kain Adonai Eloheinu b'shochvenu uvkumenu nasiach b'chukecha v'nismach b'divrei toratecha uv'mitzvotecha l'olam va'ed ki heim chayenu ve'orech yamenu uvahem negeh yomam v'layla ve'ahavatcha al tasir mimenu le'olamim baruch atah Adonai ohev amo Yisrael.
כי הם היינו ואורך ימינו והם נגי יומם ולילה ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים ברוך אתה אדוני
Baruch Hu Baruch Shemo.
אוהב עמו ישראל
Amen.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod, Malchuto, Leolam Avod. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתן לבניך, ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובישעריך.
On page 209, we read together in the English beginning the second paragraph. Therefore, impress these words of mine upon your heart and upon your soul. Bind them as a sign upon your hand and as a symbol above your eyes. Teach them to your children, speaking of them when you sit in your home, when you walk on your way, when you lie down and when you rise up. Inscribe them upon the doorposts of your home and on your gates. Then the length of your days and the days of your children on the land that Adonai swore to give to your ancestors will be as the days of the heavens over the earth. We continue in private prayer, the next paragraph.
Adonai Elohechem emet.
We continue on page 210 on the far left-hand side of the page. Once more, Atonement Day has come, all pretense gone, naked heart revealed to the hiding self. We stand on holy ground between the day that was and the one that must be. We tremble. Will the errors in our past teach us to walk in straight paths? May we still dream of a time when love and truth shall meet, justice and peace shall embrace. Hope of Israel, in our weakness give us strength, in our blindness be our guide. When we falter, hold our hand. Make consistent our impulse for good. Let us know the joy of walking in your ways, as the children of Israel once were able to do at the sea. May we sing like them, Micha Mocha Beilim Adonai, who is like you among the mighty. The Chazan continues in the middle of the facing page at the bullet.
ומלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם משה ומרים ובני ישראל לכנו שירה בשמחה רבה ואמרו חולם מי כמוך באלים אדוני מי כמוך נדר בקודש נורות תהילות אוסף אלף מלכותך ראו בניך בוקע ים לפני משה זה עליינו ואמרו אדוני לעולם ועד ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני
ברוך הוא ברוך שמו
גאל ישראל
אמן
ותקנינו בעצות ולמנח ומשאינו למשפח והגן בדינו ואשר מלאינו בדרך רב ונוסר סרטן מפנינו כי יושר מן סלחים כי מלכונו ושמור תתנו בנו
ובצל כנפיך תסתירנו כי אלה שומרנו ומצילנו אתה כי אל מלך ענון ורחום אתה ושמור צאתנו ובואנו לחיים ולשלום מעתה ועד עולם, מעטוב ועד עולם. ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך, ברוך אתה אדוני, הפורש סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל ועל ירושלים.
We rise and continue the second paragraph on page 212.
כי ביום הזה יכפר עליכם לתאר אתכם מכל חטאותיכם לפני אדוני תתארו. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה בעלמא דברה קירותי וימליך מלכותי בהיכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בגלה ובזמן קריב וימרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם ולעלמי עלמי. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו לילה לילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמא ואמרו Amen.
We continue with the Amidah, pages 213 through 221, in private prayer and reflection. As the last individuals complete their recitation of the Amidah, I'll invite others to turn to page 223. We rise for Ya'aleh.
Ya'aleh, Ya'aleh, Tachanuneinu me'erev, me'erev, ve'avo Shabbateinu mi-boker, ve'yera'er inoneinu ad arev. Ya'aleh, Ya'aleh, koleinu me'erev, ve'yavo tzidkateinu mi-boker, ve'yera'eh pidyoneinu ad arev. Ya'aleh, Ya'aleh, inoyeinu me'erev, ve'yavo selichateinu mi-boker, ve'yera'eh nakateinu ad arev. Ya'aleh, Ya'aleh, menuseinu me'erev, ve'yavo lemano mi-boker, ve'yera'eh kippureinu ad arev. Ya'aleh yisheinu me'erev, ve'yavo tohoreinu mi-boker, ve'yera'eh inoneinu Adarif, lai la lai 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 la 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 lai, la 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 lai. Yahale zichroneinu me'erev ve'yavo v'yudeinu miboker ve'yera'eh hadrateinu adaref lai la lai 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 la 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 lai la 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 lai Yahale dovkeinu me'erev ve'yavo gileinu miboker ve'yera'eh bakashateinu Adarev lai la lai 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 la 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 lai Yalen kateinu me'erev ve'yavo elecha miboker ve'yera'eh eleinu adarev lai la lai 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 la 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 lai la 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 lai.
As the ark is closed, you may be seated, and we continue on page 225. Originally, the holy meant that which is set apart, isolated, segregated. In Jewish piety, assumed a new meaning, denoting a quality that is involved, immersed in common and earthly endeavors, carried primarily by individual, private, simple deeds, rather than public ceremonies. We continue, Haneshama Lach.
Haneshama Lach v'haguf polach chusa chusa Haneshama Lach v'haguf polach chusa chusa ala malach Haneshama Lach v'haguf polach chusa chusa ala malach Haneshama Lach v'haguf shelach Adonai Adonai Aseh leman shemecha Atanu al shemecha Adonai Aseh leman shemecha Bavur kevod shemcha Ki el chanun verachum shemecha למען שמך אדוני, וסלחת לעווננו, כי רב הוא. דרכך אלוהינו להרעיף אפיך, לרעים ולטובים, והיא תהילתך. למענך אלוהינו עשה ולא לנו. ראי עמידתנו דלים וריקים, תעלה רוחה לעלה נידף, תנחם על עפר ואפר. תשליך חטאינו ותחון במעשיך, תראה כי אין איש עשה עמנו צדקה.
We rise as the Chazan continues in the middle of page 226 at the arrow.
תעבור על פשע ותמחה אשם, כיום ויתייצב עמו שם. תאזין שבתנו ותקשיב מנו מאמר, כיום ויקרא בשם אדוני, ויעבור אדוני על פניו ויקרא. אדוני, אדוני, אל רחום וחנון, ערך אפיים ורב חסד ואמת, נוצר חסד לאלפים, נושא עוון ופשע וחטא ונקה, וסלחת על עווננו ולחטאתנו ונחלתנו. סלח לנו אבינו כי חטאנו, מחל לנו מלכנו כי פשענו, כי אתה אדוני טוב וסלח, ורב חסד לכל קוראיך.
You may be seated as we continue with the piyut Ki Hine Kach Omer.
כי הנה כך אומר, ביד היוצר, ברצותו מארחיב וברצותו מקצר. כן אנחנו בידך חסד נוצר, לבדית הבית, ואל תפן ליצר. כי הנה כאבן ביד המסתת, ברצותו חס וברצותו מחטאת. כן אנחנו בידך מהיה וממוטט, לבדית הבית, ואל תפן ליצר. כי הנה כגרזן ביד ההרש, ברצותו דבק לאור וברצותו פרש. כן אנחנו בידך תומך הניב זרש, לבדית הבית, ואל תפן ליצר. כי הנה כהגה ביד המלאך, ברצותו חז וברצותו שילח. כן אנחנו בידך אל טוב וסלח לברית הבית ואל תפן ליצר כי נכס זכוכית ביד המזגג ברצותו הוגג וברצותו ממוגג כן אנחנו בידך מוכל זדון ושגג לברית הבית ואל תפן ליצר כי הנה כידיעה ביד הרוקם ברצותו מיישר וברצותו מעקם כן אנחנו בידך על כנו ונוקם לברית הבית ואל תפן ליצר כי נקע כסף ביד הצורף ברצותו משגשג וברצותו מצרף כן אנחנו בידך ממציא למזור טרף לברית הבית ואל תפן ליצר.
We rise as the service continues on page 229.
אל מלך יושב על כיסא רחמים מתנחק בהסידות מוחל עוונות עמו מעביר ראשון ראשון מרבה מחילה לחטאים וסליחה לפושעים עושה צדקות עם כל בשר ורוח לא חרתם תגמול קוראת לנו לומר 13 זכור לנו היום ברית 13 כמו שהודעת לעניו מקדם כמו שכתוב וירד אדוני בענן ויתייצב עמו שם ויקרא בשם אדוני ויעבור אדוני על פניו ויקרא אדוני, אדוני, אל רחום וחנון, ערך אפיים ורב חסד ואמת, נוצר חסד לאלפים, נושא עוון ופשע וחטא ונקה, וסלחת על עווננו, על חטאתנו, ונחלתנו. סלח לנו אבינו, כי חטאנו, מחל לנו מלכנו, כי פשענו, כי אתה אדוני טוב וסלח, ורב חסד לכל קורך.
We remain standing as the ark will be opened for Shema Kolenu, and we continue our service on page 233.
Shema Kolenu Adonai Eloheinu Chus verachem aleinu aleinu vekabel berachamim ברחמים וברצון את תפילתנו
הקדוש ברחם עלינו וקבל ברחמים וברצון את תפילתנו.
השיבנו אדוני אליך, השיבנו אליך ונשובה, חדש ימינו, ימינו כקדם.
השיבנו אדוני אליך ונשובה, חדש ימינו כקדם.
אל תשליכנו מלפניך, ורוח קודשך אל תיקח ממנו.
אל תשליכנו מלפניך, ורוח קודשך אל תיקח ממנו.
אל תשליכנו לעת זקנה, כי כלות כהנו אל תעזבנו.
אל תשליכנו לעת זקנה, ככלות כוחנו אל תעזבנו.
אל תעזבנו, אדוני אלוהינו, אל תרחק ממנו. עשה עמנו אות לטובה, וירוסוננו ויבושו, כי אתה אדוני עזרתנו וניחמתנו. מרין הזין אדוני בינו ובגיננו, יול הרצון מבין לפגלגנו אדוני צורנו וגואלנו, כי לך אדוני אוכלנו, אתה תענה אדוני אלוהינו.
As the ark is closed, you may be seated.
אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, אל תעזבנו ואל תתשנו, ואל תכלימנו ואל תפר ונתקע איתנו, קרבנו לתורתך, למדנו במצוותיך, חורנו דרכיך, חת ליבנו ליראה אל שמך, ומול אל לבבינו לאהבתך, ונשוב אליך באמת ובלב שלם, ולמען שמך גדול תמחל ותסלח לעווננו, ככתוב בדברי קודשך, למען שמך אדוני וסלחת לעווני, כי רב הוא. אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, סלח לנו, מחל לנו, כפר לנו, כי אנו עמך ואתה אלוהינו, אנו בניך ואתה אבינו, אנו עבדיך ואתה אדוננו, אנו כחלך ואתה חלקנו, אנו נחלתך ואתה גורלנו, אנו צונך ואתה רוענו, אנו חרמך ואתה נוטרנו, אנו פעולתך ואתה יוצרנו, אנו רעייתך ואתה דודנו, אנו סגולתך ואתה קרובנו, אנו עמך ואתה מלכנו, אנו מאמירך ואתה מאמירנו.
We rise as the service continues at the top of page 235.
Ay, 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 אשמנו, בגדנו, גזלנו, דיברנו דופי, איי 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 איי, הבינו והירשנו, זדנו, חמסנו, טפלנו שקר, איי 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 איי, יצנו רע, כזבנו, לצנו, מרדנו, ניצנו, שררנו, אבינו, פשענו, צררנו, כישינו עורף, איי 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 איי, רשענו, שחטנו, תתייבנו, טעינו, תיתנו.
We continue on page 237. We'll read responsively the litany of Al-Chet. We have sinned against you unwillingly and willingly.
And we have sinned against you through hardening of our hearts.
We have sinned against you thoughtlessly.
And we have sinned against you in idle chatter.
We have sinned against you through sexual immorality.
And we have sinned against you openly and in private.
We have sinned against you knowingly and deceitfully.
And we have sinned against you by the way we talk.
We have sinned against you by defrauding others.
And we have sinned against you in our innermost thoughts.
We have sinned against you through forbidden trysts.
And we have sinned against you through empty confessions.
We have sinned against you by scorning parents and teachers.
And we have sinned against you purposely and by mistake.
We have sinned against you by resorting to violence.
And we have sinned against you by public desecration of your name.
We have sinned against you through foul speech.
We have sinned against you through foolish talk.
We have sinned against you through pursuing the evil impulse.
And we have sinned against you wittingly and unwittingly. Ve'al kulam Eloha selichot selach lanu mechalanu kaper lanu.
We have sinned against you through denial and deceit.
We have sinned against you by taking bribes.
We have sinned against you by clever cynicism.
We have sinned against you by speaking ill of others.
We have sinned against you by the way we do business.
And we have sinned against you in our eating and drinking.
We have sinned against you by greed and oppressive interest.
And have sinned against you through arrogance.
We have sinned against you in everyday conversation.
And we have sinned against you through conspirational glances.
We have sinned against you through condescension.
And we have sinned against you through stubbornness. Ve'al kulam Eloha selichot selach lanu mechalanu kaper lanu.
We have sinned against you by throwing off all restraint.
And we have sinned against you by rashly judging others.
We have sinned against you by plotting against others.
And we have sinned against you through selfishness.
We have sinned against you through superficiality.
And have sinned against you through stubbornness.
We have sinned against you by rushing to do evil.
We have sinned against you through gossip.
We have sinned against you through empty promises.
And we have sinned against you through baseless hatred.
We have sinned against you by betraying trust.
We have sinned against you by succumbing to confusion. Ve'al kulam Eloha selichot selach lanu mechalanu kaper lanu.
You may be seated as we continue with the piyut on page 240. Hu Ya'anenu. May the one who answered Sarah past the time of her youth Hu Ya'anenu. Abraham on Mount Moriah, Hu Ya'anenu. Isaac, their son, bound on the altar, Hu Ya'anenu. Rebekah, as her sons struggled within her, Hu Ya'anenu. Jacob at Bethel, Hu Ya'anenu. Leah in her loneliness, Hu Ya'anenu. Rachel, desperate for a child, Hu Ya'anenu. Joseph, abandoned in prison, Hu Ya'anenu. The Hebrew midwives as they stood at the birthing place, Hu Ya'anenu. Yocheved, having faith on the bank of the Nile, Hu Ya'anenu. The people of Israel on the shores of the sea, Hu Ya'anenu. Moses standing on the slopes of Sinai, Hu Ya'anenu. Miriam with her well of water, Hu Ya'anenu. Aaron offering incense to God, Hu Ya'anenu. Pinchas seeking his place above the crowd, Hu Ya'anenu. The daughters of Tzlofchad standing their ground, Hu Ya'anenu. And those who are righteous, upright, decent, and compassionate, answer us, Hu Ya'anenu. We turn forward in our Machzorim and we continue with Avinu Malkeinu. We rise as the ark is opened.
Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu Chatanu lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, ein lanu melech elata.
Avinu Malkeinu ein lanu melech elata.
Avinu Malkeinu, aseh imanu leman shemecha.
Avinu Malkeinu aseh imanu leman shemecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, chadesh aleinu shana tova.
Avinu Malkeinu chadesh aleinu shana tova.
Avinu Malkeinu
batem aleinu kol zerat. Avinu Malkeinu bateh hamavshavot zaneinu. Avinu Malkeinu afer tzarneinu. Avinu Malkeinu kaleh kol tzar mastin me'aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu kaleh deber acher avashvim ashvim. Avinu Malkeinu slach machal avinu. Avinu Malkeinu metev aher avinu. Tzakatinu mineged einecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, Hazireinu b'tshuva shlema lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu achzireinu b'tshuva shlema lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu shelach refuah shlema lecholei amecha.
Avinu Malkeinu shelach refuah shlema lecholei amecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, zochreinu bezichron tov lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu zochreinu b'zikaron tov lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu kotveinu besefer chaim tovim.
Avinu Malkeinu kotveinu b'sefer chaim tovim.
Avinu Malkeinu kotveinu besefer geula v'yeshua.
Avinu Malkeinu kotveinu b'sefer geula v'yeshua.
Avinu Malkeinu kotveinu besefer parnasa v'chalkala.
Avinu Malkeinu kotveinu b'sefer parnasa v'chalkala.
Avinu Malkeinu kotveinu besefer zechuyot.
Avinu Malkeinu kotveinu b'sefer zchuyot.
Avinu Malkeinu kotveinu besefer selicha umechila.
Avinu Malkeinu kotveinu b'sefer slicha umechila. Avinu Malkeinu atzmachinu Avinu Malkeinu Avinu Malkeinu Avinu Malkeinu Shmakalinu, Kuzrachim Malinu, Avinu Malkeinu Kabel, Brachim Avinu Malkeinu Avinu Malkeinu was of course, for nothing. Avinu Malkeinu Kamol, Avinu Malkeinu Salamanu, Avinu Malkeinu Salamanu,
Avinu Malkeinu Selemancha, Imlo Lemanenu.
Avinu Malkeinu Selemancha,
Avinu Malkeinu, Choneinu Vaneinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Choneinu Vaneinu, Ki ein banu masim. Aseh imanu, Tzedaka v'chesed. Aseh imanu, Tzedaka v'chesed, V'hoshienu. Avinu Malkeinu, Choneinu Vaneinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Choneinu Vaneinu, Ki ein banu masim. Aseh imanu, Tzedaka v'chesed. Aseh imanu, Tzedaka v'chesed, V'hoshienu.
As the ark is closed, we remain standing, and the service continues with Kaddish Shalem.
יתגדל וקדש שמי רבה,
אמן.
בעלמא דברך ירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון ומכון ובחי כל בית ישראל ועל הזמן קריב ויאמרו. אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך, לעלם מעל מעלמיה.
יתברך.
יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה.
בריך.
לעילה, לעילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה תושבעתה ונחמתה דמרם בעלמה ויאמרו. אמן. תתקבל צלות כהן ובאות כהן דכל ישראל קדמו כהן דבשמיא ויאמרו. אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיא וחיים עלינו בכל ישראל ויאמרו. אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן.
Chavirim, you may be seated. Centuries ago, a poet once wrote, "In the middle of our life journey, I found myself in a dark wood. I had wandered from the straight path. It isn't easy to talk about it. It was such a thick, wild, and rough forest that when I think of it, my fear returns. I can't offer any good explanation for how I entered it. I was so sleepy at that point that I strayed from the right path." With those words, Dante in his Inferno captured a fundamental human constant. The forest, the wilderness, the jungle was a metaphor for a formative place of fear. It was the expression that we all have difficult internal journeys that we dread to tread. How many books, movies, fairy tales, adventure stories have we read in which the hero has to go through the wilderness and through the dark night of the soul? Whether it was a moment of sadness or of loss or of failure, the hero, like we, are tempted to rush out of the place if we can, to leave it behind. But as all of those adventure narratives and all of those heroes and all of those stories and tales remind us, that it is only by learning to live in the darkness that we can find our true selves and become the best version of ourselves. Joseph Campbell, who wrote so extensively about mythologies of every stripe and type, opined, every culture has a story of a hero who must find herself or himself only through travel in the dark woods. Our lives are made up of this darkness and of this light. Right now, in this moment, whether we are here together or whether we are far flung in our homes, we are living in both the light and in the darkness. The reality that we know is that whatever we are experiencing will pass. But the question of whether we will be transformed by the experience is one that only we can answer. What Susan Sontag wrote of sickness in her book Illness as Metaphor could also be said to be true of any and every challenge. Illness, she writes, is the night side of life, a more onerous citizenship. Everyone who is born holds dual citizenship in the kingdom of the well and in the kingdom of the sick. Although we all prefer to use the good passport, sooner or later each of us is obliged, at least for a spell, to identify ourselves as citizens of that other place, to experience the darkness, and perhaps when we emerge, to be stronger and more appreciative of the light. A great teacher of the power of light in darkness was the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov was born in the backwaters of the Carpathian Mountains in what was 18th century Poland and is now in the Ukraine. His teachings were an invitation to explore the inner self. It was a map that allowed us access to ancient knowledge, to pre-modern models of religiosity, and the transformative secrets of Jewish teaching and tradition. And it was a guidepost through these challenging days of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. The Baal Shem Tov believed that we find God in the ongoing story of our own lives. He believed in the value of each and every life. And he understood that one who is of the world and not withdrawn from it can truly experience the entire gamut and grow and become a source of light. For the Baal Shem Tov saw even our struggles as part of our experience and our encounter with the godly and the holy. Difficulties, he taught, do not come from God, but God is part of our struggle with them and against them. After many years of leading his followers and offering a multitude of lessons, the following story came to light. His followers asked him, "Rebbe, Master, what is different in the world since you have come and shared your wisdom with us?" His response, "Before I came and began to teach, when a thief tried to enter the house, they would shout and scream and try to scare the thief away. Now that I have come, the Baal Shem Tov went on. When a thief tries to enter the house, they lie in wait. They trap the thief and they hand the thief over to the proper authorities. That, he says, is the change that I have wrought. Shouting and trying to scare the thief away or letting the thief in before turning him over to the proper authorities. But his message was clearly not about literal thieves or literal houses. He was talking instead about the nature of the human soul. The house is the body, you and I. And the thief was the shadow, the messy stuff that lurks, our failures and our shortcomings, our embarrassments, the things that grizz at us in the darkness of night when we can't sleep. It's the stuff that we try to keep hidden, sometimes even from ourselves. It is both the things that we have done, the things that we are perhaps drawn to do but restrain ourselves. The thief in the Baal Shem Tov story is the temptation to do unhealthy acts, to follow our temptations to hurt ourselves or to hurt others. It is the accumulation of sadness and frustration, our failures and our fears. It is what the ancient sages called the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, the thing that drags us away into the darkness and away from the light. In Yiddish, we would have called it schmutz. Schmutz is this wonderful Yiddish term that is a synonym for something dirty. It's like the parent who says to their child, "Come over here," and they give the thumb a little lick so they can wipe the little schmutz off the cheek. Or it's something that a spouse might say, "You can't leave yet. You've got some schmutz on your cheek." But schmutz is also the internal schmutz. It is, in essence, I think, what the Baal Shem Tov was trying to teach. That before his model, when people felt the evil inclination coming upon them, they would try to scare it away. And now he says, we let the schmutz in. Not so much because it wasn't there before, but we let it into our consciousness. We acknowledge it, and we recognize that it won't be scared away or handed over to someone else to deal with. That the only way to deal with the schmutz is to work at it ourselves, to own it, to embrace it, to learn from it, to transform the schmutz, the darkness, into a source of light. The Baal Shem Tov was trying to teach us that shouting and screaming to try to scare the thief away was an aspect of immaturity, and it won't work. That the only way to deal with all of that schmutz, all of that baggage, was to struggle through it. We have to admit that it's there, and that there is something to learn from letting it in. There is always something to learn from our evil inclinations, from all of our actions, and perhaps especially from our failures. It is an opportunity to learn from our fears and our vulnerability. And what is true for us as individuals is also true for societies. In the Haftarah that we will read tomorrow morning, the prophet Isaiah speaks to the returning Israelites, those who have been exiled in Babylonia and now are joyous. They think in the return to the land of Israel, the land of their ancestors. But Isaiah warns them, do not think that your journey is over. Do not think that simply coming back to the land is restorative. The reason you were exiled is not yet changed. The society which you left is the one that you will bring back, and it is a society that was suffused with hatreds, with injustices. It is a society that mistreated too many elements of its own community, ignoring their suffering. When Isaiah speaks to the returnees and says to them that God is not interested in their fasting, if their fasting does not include an effort to combat the poverty and the hunger in the rest of the society in the rest of the year, Isaiah is telling those who have left and are now returning that if they truly want to return, if they truly want to be joyous, if they truly want to restore their relationship with God to what it was, that they have to combat injustice in their society, to show elemental kindness to everyone, that no covenantal relationship with God exists without love for every person in the society and with justice for each. The duty, he says, is to help the hungry, to help the downtrodden, to help uplift all in our society, in their society. Only then will the dark journey of exile truly be completed. Only then will they be able to become the just, equitable, and fair society that God demanded and expected of them. This year, Isaiah's words ring perhaps more powerfully than they have to many ears. We are witness in our own day and age to a call to confront the darknesses in the history of our country and of our nation. We are being called to do and confront the schmutz that we didn't want to talk about, that we pretend doesn't exist because it is painful to look at. We don't like to see the schmutz. But as Isaiah taught us, and as the Baal Shem Tov affirmed, the only way to deal with the schmutz is head on, to confront it in all its pain, it's all its difficulty, and grow from that experience. And then we can truly say we have repented and returned and moved closer to the best versions of ourselves as individuals and collectively as a society and as a nation. We recite the Vidui multiple times on Yom Kippur. We implore God to purify our hearts so that we can serve in truth. But to purify our hearts requires that we recognize what is lurking there in the darkness, to confront the schmutz, and to transform it into a learning moment and turn it into a source of light. I want to conclude by sharing with you an interesting vidui that was written by David Barcon, who is a staff member at thetorah.com, which is a wonderful, wonderful website, but he's also a Bible scholar at Bar Ilan University. And he created the following Vidoy confession, which I think speaks particularly to our moment. We appeal to authority, arguing based on the support of a respected authority rather than allowing our ideas to stand on their own. We harbored biased blind spots, assuming the conclusions of others to be the product of bias, while ignoring the impact of bias on our own judgment. We cherry-picked evidence that supported our thesis and ignored contradictory evidence. We created double standards, holding the beliefs and claims of others to a higher level of critical scrutiny than our own. We made our egos and reputations more important to us than our desire for truth. We feigned openness to evidence when really we had no intent of ever changing our minds. We let groupthink and social pressures shape our beliefs and distort our reasoning. We branded as heresy conclusions we disliked, impeding intellectual debate and open-ended inquiry. We created ideological echo chambers, surrounding ourselves with homogeneous thinking to shield ourselves from dissenting ideas. We jumped to conclusions, judged issues and people without hearing both sides or doing sufficient research. We acted as know-it-alls, professing to have knowledge we did not, and having too much pride to answer a question with "I don't know." We lost our curiosity. We stopped listening to others and became focused instead on winning debates and scoring points. We engaged in magical thinking, positing cause and effect relationships without evidence. We made ourselves naive and dogmatic, neglecting to educate ourselves to think critically, especially concerning our own beliefs. We ostracized dissenters in our group who pointed out our errors or who acknowledged valid points on the other side. We conflated possibility with probability, deeming possible explanations on equal footing with explanations backed by the weight of evidence. We were quasi-scientific, employing jargon but failing to apply the methods or the rigor of science. We ridiculed and leveled ad hominem attacks at people as a substitute for addressing their arguments. We made straw man arguments, knocking down inaccurate and feeble versions of our opponent's positions. We used Trojan horse tactics, smuggling in wild speculation by surrounding it with well-established facts. We were unyielding, refusing to acknowledge when a valid point was made by the other side. We were needlessly verbose, using endless and complex verbiage in an attempt to exhaust our interlocutors. We withheld knowledge from ourselves and our children in order to maintain our beliefs. We misused our expertise, wielding our credentials to speak about areas we weren't sufficiently knowledgeable in. We made the yarmulke defense, rationalizing false or unethical statements because they were presented in the guise of religion. We were so ideologically zealous that we became fundamentalists for our own position. And so we took ourselves, our opinions, our disagreements far too seriously and forgot how to laugh and appreciate another's humanity. We committed all these sins because we refused to look inward, to see the schmutz, to embrace all the negative and to transform it into learning moments and eventually into a blessing and a source of light. May we do better in the year ahead. May we efface the schmutz individually, collectively, and societally, so that a year from now we have less of a burden and more of a blessing of light. Amen. Chavirim, I'll invite you to please rise as we turn now to page 246 for Aleinu.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים, לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נותן שמיים. אין עוד דקה. ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
We continue in the middle of page 248 with a selection from Psalm 27, Achat Sha'alti, about 6 lines down from the top of the page, and also in transliteration on the facing page.
אחת שאלתי מאת אדוני אותה אבקש, אחת שאלתי מאת אדוני אותה אבקש, שבתי בבית אדוני כל ימי חיי, לחזות בנועם אדוני, ולבקר בהיכלו, לחזות בנועם אדוני, ולבקר בהיכלו.
We'll continue on page 247 with Kaddish Yatom for mourners and those observing Yortzeit. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shmei Rabbah, bi'alma divra kirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chai echon v'yom echon v'chai echol beit Israel, ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru. Amen.
Amen.
Yehei shmei Rabba mevarach la'alam lo me'almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnasei v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shmei kudsha brichu. La'ela mikol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran bi'alma v'imru amen.
Amen.
Yehei shlama Rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Chavirim, you may be seated. In a moment, we're going to conclude our service on page 250. But before we do, I just want to say a double thank you. First, I want to say thank you to our men's club. You may have noticed that when you came in, our sukkah is on the patio, and it is almost ready for the Festival of Sukkot. So thank you to the Men's Club for their annual effort in constructing the synagogue sukkah. And this year, you're going to see something unusual. I want to thank Norman and Mickey Masry, and especially Norman and some of his workforce who indulged the rabbi in a very crazy idea. And we're going to have, in our parking lot, a drive-through sukkah. There'll be hours that are designated wherein you will be able to come in, drive in, fulfill all the various mitzvot of the sukkah and lulav and etrog. And so I want to thank them for enabling my little bit of mishigas. So watch for details about visiting both of our synagogue sukkot this year. And with that, we'll conclude with Yigdal, page 250.
יגדל אלוהים חי וישתבח, נמצא בעיני תל מציאותו, אחד ואין יחיד כייחודו, נעלם וגם אין סוף לאחדותו, אין לו דמות הגוף ואינו גוף, לא נערוך אליו קדושתו, קדמון לכל דבר אשר נברא, ראשון בין ראשית לראשיתו, הינו אדון עולם וכל נוצר, יורה גדולתו מלכותו, שפע נבואתו נתנו, אל אנשי סגולתו ותפארתו. לא קם בישראל כמו שעוד נביא, ומביט את אמונתו, תורת אמת נתן לעמואל, על יד נביאו נאמן ביתו, לא יכל יפעל ולא ימיר דתו, לעולמים לזולתו, צופה ויודע סתרנו, מביט לסוף דבר בקדמתו, גומל לאיש חסד כמפעלו, נותן לרשע רע כרישתו, ישלח לקץ ימין משיחנו, לפדות מחכה קץ ישועתו, מתים יחייל ברוב חסדו, ברוך הדעת שם תהילתו, מתים יחייל ברוב חסדו, ברוך הדעת שם תהילתו.
L'shana tova techatemu. May we all be sealed for a good year filled with blessing. Amen.